Hey Skyfarers, and welcome to Aethercast, the Kharadron Overlords channel and podcast, where today we are chatting with Carl Ong about his recent tournament experience at Summer Slaughter, where he went 5-0 and came second. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Well, thank you. I've been a long-time fan of you guys, and KO is my favorite army, so here I am.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Didn't know you were aware of us and our fan. I feel bad because we probably should have had you on before a couple of years ago. Oh, I say a couple of years ago. My sense of time is rubbish. But there was another time where I think you did pretty well in a tournament. And I wanted to get you on, and then I had no idea how to contact you. And then it just got too long.
Yeah.
But that's cool. And also joining us for tonight's show, we have Dwarden Prime, Max Bowman. Welcome back, Max.
Hello.
And Thunderer from Down Under, Mr. Alexander Cron.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you, Cron. Coming to us on a fresh and early Monday morning for once.
Yeah.
Yeah, real fresh.
And a few people in the chat say hi to Robin Mankiller. And the other person is Max. That doesn't count. There's just one person in the chat. Cool. So, got Carl on the show. You might recognise his face from Season of War, where you do some really cool battle reports.
Mm-hmm. So we just do some quick battle reports. It's condensed so that people who don't have a long attention span of watching 4-hour battle reports can tune in, and we're more competitive focused than a lot of stuff out there. So we try to bring tournament lists against each other and have fun. That sort of thing.
That's cool.
Oh, I gotta say they are honestly my favorite battle reports on the internet. Like,
Thank you.
I mean, in the group back in Australia, we watch them religiously. They are fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're great. I showed my wife. Look, his wife is playing Warhammer with him, but she's like,
we have to drag her.
Don't say that.
They are really great battle reports, and really well. Like the production levels on those are really good.
That's all Jordan. He has a background in television. I just show up, drink some beers, and play some games. So
yeah,
but we get all the credit for that sort of thing. But that's all Jordan. So
they're cool. Well, it's the best way to do it. Get someone else to do all the work.
Pretty much.
Yeah. That's how I do it.
That's how Max and Cron do it. But other than Season of War, Carl, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of Warhammer?
Sure. I came a little late to the party in terms of miniature wargaming in itself. The first GHB for Age of Sigmar was my starting point in miniature gaming, period. And at that point, I was already past university, so I didn't play Age of Sigmar or fantasy or anything like that as a kid. Always been a competitive player, so once I knew that there was some sort of point system and that sort of thing, that's kind of when I jumped in. Been playing since then, mostly competitive Warhammer. Those who know me know that I jump around a lot of armies, but when KO was announced at the outset, that was kind of the aesthetic that I wanted for an army, and so pre-ordered basically everything, and since then I've still had my KO, and I periodically go back to them. We've had some highs, some lows, and some very lows, and now we're back up to the highs. So I'm wanting to take them to some success. Didn't really know how they were going to play in 3.12, whatever we're in right now, but I had some theories.
Something. It's basically pi at the moment.
Yeah. So I had some theories going into Summer Slaughter. Didn't really have very much actual experience. It was all theoretical, and so here we are. Kind of worked out.
Okay. Wait, I mean, you say you didn't have much experience, but I guess you mean with
the new handbook and with KO in that specific in the specific time period that we are right now. But in terms of Warhammer experience, I have quite a bit, I think, comparatively to a lot of people, just because of Season of War. and that sort of thing, and filming. Play about 3 or 4 games a week. So quite a bit more than most people.
Yeah, I mean that's more than some people get in a month. But also some experience. We alluded to it earlier, but some experience with KO in the past as well.
Correct. Yeah. With them being my favorite faction, I would revisit them from time to time, see how they're doing in that specific time period, both in AOS 2 and AOS 3, and then 3 point whatever we're at right now. I just periodically check in on my KO buddies and see if I mean, as much as I love KO, I also love winning. So if I don't feel like they're as competitive as I can make them, I'm not a person who will take a crappy army and try to 4-1 with them. I like my 5-0s, and not to bury the lead, but this is actually my very first 5-0 period with any army. So very happy to do it with a KO. So.
Cool. Nice. I mean, and 5-0 it's a great achievement. Yeah. So it's really cool. Talk about your list in a minute, but before we do, is there actually any news? We normally cover some news at the beginning of the show.
Where's that Dreki miniature? Where is it? They announced that Dreki Flint miniature, and that's it.
Christmas.
Did they say this year? Next year?
They haven't said.
Could be Christmas.
What miniature is this?
Dreki Flint.
Dreki Flint. That character.
Have you not seen
it?
No, I actually haven't seen it. I'm gonna look
Oh, there's a KO.
It's got like an axe with really cool. Skyhook inside the axe, and then like a 3-barrel pistol on the other hand.
Oh yeah. Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing it. There he is.
Well, I mean, he hasn't come out yet, so you've not missed anything.
There's some short stories in White Dwarf, I think, and there's also Black Library short stories.
And that
they're red, and they're nice.
Isn't he the guy from the novels?
The other guy is also, he has his own book series, the vampire guy. I want both. That's the only thing I'm looking forward like the rest of the year in terms of releases. Because your books like Zincher, Lumineth, I'm not interested.
I mean, he could be something to do with a Warcry, Warbound, or Underworlds or something potentially at some point. But
I think he will be like Gotrek.
Yeah,
Gotrek was Black Library, so he'll get his rules and then we will dominate with him. He can stop rally, or I don't know what he does.
I don't know. He'll do something.
He'll let
us put ogres in a boat because that's what he does in the rules in the books.
Oh, yeah.
But the other news is there's been some FAQs which are all generally quite sensible.
Yes, good one.
I think there were some things missing.
On the damage stacking abilities.
Yeah.
Yes, it makes sense.
That was a cluster weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the only thing relevant to KO was the thing about scoring objectives before the battle, or not scoring them, but capturing them. That it happens after any pre-game moves. So that's how if you're playing more Nar, that's relevant.
Great, yeah.
Or custom Skyport. That's pretty good. But they thankfully clarified it after they got rid of a battalion that everyone had access to that gave you a pre-game move, which was handy. And they didn't cover the thing that we wanted covered for KO, which was the thing about whether you generate CP if you're in a garrison.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, there's some discussion on it, whether you do or not. But
isn't there like a side text that says if you're in a garrison, you're exactly the same as if you're on a battlefield?
It says
blah blah blah. You can do the same stuff.
Can do anything. It's whether the unit. I don't know. It's just there's some people with very strong feelings about it.
Yes,
is what I say.
Okay.
We were discussing it a little bit before the show, but they allowed you to play it that you could generate CP in Summer Slaughter, didn't they, Carl?
Correct. Yeah.
So
same as if you were on the battlefield is what they said.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Well, you are on the battlefield if you're in a garrison.
Did they do the same with the KO battle tactics?
Yes. So the garrison one was very, very easy.
Both of them are very easy.
Yeah, they're both very easy if they say that they count as on the battlefield because you just don't do anything basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, well that was handy.
Which is super handy. In my last tournament last week, with 5 rounds, I only dropped 1 battle tactic of 5 games because with KO they're super easy to achieve.
Yeah, it just rolls from one to the other to the other.
It's just march for enemy lines. Then do this one, mobilize the fleet, boots on the ground, desecrate, and then an eye.
This one's mine.
Or against the odds.
Against the odds. I always call it this one's mine, and I point out
this one's mine. Yeah,
this one's mine.
I didn't trust my chemist to kill anything.
No, me neither.
Although he actually did. He ruined my 1 battle tactic. Where I wanted to kill something with my Arcanine, I said, "Oh, shoot!" With the chemist, like bringing down a few wounds. Boom! He killed it. 50 shots, and he killed everything. Like, no!
No!
Damn it!
Well, when your chemist is too good.
He was too good in that context.
Cool. Well, should we have a look at the list then? Here we go. So, Barak Zilfin, 1955 points and lots of drops, 10 drops. So you have a chemist as your general collector. He has spell in a bottle because you have a warlord battalion. So your first artifact was given to the navigator that you have. So here's the staff of optimization. And then you have an admiral, with arcane tome and flaming weapon. 3 units of 10 Arcanauts, which are all in expert conquerors, which is interesting. And no skypikes.
Nope.
10 Thunderers, I'm assuming they're all with rifles. Gun Hauler with the Spar Torpedo and the Sky Cannon, and an Ironclad with the Battle Ram, and a Cronspine Incarnate, which is bonded to the Admiral, and a Purple Sun. I'm just going to cross that bit out there because that's... Just ignore that.
There was no battle regiment, no.
No. And there's certainly not a battle regiment with only 1 thing in it. Cool. So there's actually quite a lot of interesting things about this list. First things first, let's talk about the Incarnate, maybe. I mean, it's just
if we were to be mean, you took the Sun and the Incarnate and added the rest of the armor to the mentor.
that was what people were telling me. People were telling me that I was being mean with.
It works.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good model.
Yes.
It does things that we can't do in KO.
It's a really good match for KO.
Yeah.
I'm playing it currently and it works. Yeah.
The Cronspine's there just as a defensive piece. The way I play, I don't usually launch it into my opponent's army and then hold them up and then shoot from the back end. I usually use it as a denial piece against my opponent's monsters. So since it moves 12, I hang it around close to where I want to be dropping the Ironclad just to protect it. Most opponents won't come into that zone with their monsters. They'll try to whittle the Arcanauts on the flanks. And so it used to be 2 dragons who do more damage to the Cronspine generally and have mortal wounds from the breath. But you just can't kill a Cronspine in 1 turn. And so there it is. And a lot of, you could technically,
You can with the Sun.
Yeah, with the Sun, yes.
Auto slay and then kill it.
Correct, or Nagash, or, yeah.
Exactly.
You could. But generally it doesn't happen that way. I try to keep them far apart from each other as best as I can. So, and with endless spells being so good now, a lot of your opponents will cast endless spells at you to try to whittle the Ironclad down, so you just eat it and then you profit.
Very cool. And then you mentioned the Purple Sun. How did you find that? Because we had Jeremy on the show recently, and Max has been playing with it recently, and they both sort of come to the conclusion that they don't like it. So how did you find it?
I hate it. It's both it elevates the army because of the -1 save. That's kind of generally why you're taking it. The auto slay one is just a bonus feature. Even if they, let's say in the future, change it so that the auto slay feature is gone and just have the -1, I think you would generally still take it. I hate it because that is what is the focus of the match. Like, oh, he killed X model with the sun instead of, well, your opponent played well, and it could just swing it so wildly that it's just like like you can't plan for it. And I did end up losing an ironclad in this tournament, my own ironclad to my own son.
Oh, it sucks when that happens.
So like I hate it because it's just so random at times. I mean, you can obviously screen it out, or you can move backwards so that you're not 11 inches within it and you don't lose it. But at some points or the other, you're gonna have to go into the danger zone with a purple sun. I've experimented with the warp lightning vortex, but it doesn't have the same impact as the sun. A lot of people talk about the sun all the time, and so even the effect of it on the war scroll with a -1 save and the auto slay, it also has the added benefit of just skewing people's deployments. Just kind of preview into the future. When I played Bill Souza, he usually plays his Magmadroths fairly close together so they can support each other. But because of the threat of the sun, he put all his Magmadroths 10 inches apart, just so that I couldn't have 2 chances to roll at the Magmadroths. Because the 105 mil is about 4 inches. So if you're 10 inches apart from each other, you can't be sunned, or two units can't be sunned. So
one or the other, but not both.
Correct. Yeah. So it did skew a lot of people's. People kept asking me, "Oh, what's the threat of the sun?" And because combined with the Zilfin hero phase move, I was just like, "Hey, just letting you know, 9 inches away, then I can throw it 16 plus 3. Just be aware of that." I just kept reminding my opponents, and if they put a hero semi close to the screen, I'm like, "Hey, remember the purple sun can come anywhere, and it's a 1 in 6 chance. Like you can never plan for it." But I just play these like small mind games with my opponent where I just keep constantly reminding them of the sun, or I tell them a story of how, like, not untrue stories. I'm like, "Hey, I killed X model with the sun. Remember that one time? So just be aware." And people usually will deploy further back just to screen it out. And if your opponent has already done that, you've already accrued an advantage over them just for a 70-point model.
I agree. I had the same feeling. People were more afraid of the threat than the sun actually did in the end.
Yeah,
it just floated about and created either a no-go zone, or I never used it. It's just...
Do you think the value of it then is more in the mind games, and actually it's probably in some ways more valuable not using it if they're waiting for the threat of it?
In Card's list, the value is higher because he can recast it with the Arcane Tome.
Correct, and that's why I took the Arcane
Tome. With getting a +1 from the Incarnate, if the Admiral is within 10 of it, that's the initial range, and it grows if it levels up. So there is a chance to send it out again, and with the Zilfin pre-game move, you can actually get it where you want it. So I think he's in this list. You're making the most use of it that you can in a KO list.
Yeah, I mean,
you can deliver it,
and then also get it. Yeah, get it again.
What I did, I just brought an orb in case it came flying back, and just auto dispel.
Yeah, as you mentioned the Arcane Tome, I guess we should just double check. You weren't using the Admiral to control it in your opponent's turn?
Correct. It's the sentences aren't separable. So once whoever casts it, that's it. That's the only time you check for control. So so no, I was using the Arcane Tome to recast it on subsequent turns. But more often than not, just Mystic Shield on the Ironclad just means just means that it's much more tanky. I'll quickly kind of mention the 10 drops. I think that's unusual for KO.
Yeah.
A lot of people had lower drops, that sort of thing. That kind of combos with the Arcane Tome. The Mystic Shield allows you to just survive a double turn if somebody doubles you much more easily than if you didn't have it, obviously. Zilfin low drop isn't nearly as good, and you have to go custom Skyport. And I really like custom Skyport, but I didn't have any chance to test it out. Zilfin's kind of the main staple for most of AOS 2, and so I was very familiar with it, which is why I arrived at this 10 drop list. And a lot of people are going 1 drop now or 3 drop, and you can't compete with them at the 1 drop level most of the time if you're playing Zilfin. And so that's why I
just to unpack that, is that because of trying to get spell in a bottle and needing the number of artifacts? Is that
correct? Yeah, the lowest you can get is 4, just with the command entourage.
Unless you want 2 chemists, and
unless you want 2 chemists, correct? You could potentially go that way. I was very, very tight in points as well. Like I knew the Admiral with the glow up that he got from the White Dwarf is just so good. The Navigator in all my games has been so good with all the flying threats, especially other people's cron spines. You can just dictate when your cron spine gets into their cron spine, and they can't generally reach you. And so I didn't really have enough points to have another chemist to go very, very low drop. And so I just went the other way and just went, let's see how much good stuff I can get. And that's kind of how I arrived here. The Expert Conquerors on the 3 Arcanauts, I actually probably wouldn't play without that in just kind of my testing. It's a weird thought. A lot of people don't see the value in Expert. Well, not that they don't see the value in Expert Conquerors, but would rather go with the lower drop. But that battalion just allows you to just play the objective game as opposed to kind of the grinding, killing game, and then take objectives afterwards.
Zilfin's also well placed to make good use of Expert Conquerors with the auto run 6 as well.
Correct. I just run them up 10 everywhere. But again, the just going back to the Purple Sun, I never really deployed it turn 1 unless there was a huge mistake by my opponent in deployment. I just, like Max was saying, using it as a threat for violence as opposed to actually the actual application of it.
Cool. One other thing I want to double check. You did have the staff on the Navigator, didn't you?
I did.
It wasn't on Best Case pairing, but
I did have the staff. There's some weird thing where the TOs asked me to email them my list, and it was double spaced for some reason, and so they tried to condense it by removing the spaces in between stuff, and had accidentally deleted the staff off of my list, and so didn't catch it until day of tournament. I told them, they're like, "Don't worry about it. Just let your opponents know." I know somebody on Twitter tried to nail me to the wall, saying that I didn't win because I didn't have the staff on my list. I'm like, I let my opponents know, and if they were like, "It's not on your list," I'm like, "I'll play without it. It's not that great an impact on the game."
No, it's not like you
a little flip
didn't
have hitting on 2s. Oh, that clinches games.
Yeah, it's not like you didn't have.
No, it's not a flare pistol.
And you gained an artifact you couldn't have had. It's just a formatting. And I noticed actually when going through the list to try and get who you played against, like that makes sense now. What you said about the double spacing, because like there were some people where it's like it was on the same line as like a hero's artifact, it would just suddenly start telling you about the next hero in the list.
Correct. Like, yeah, because they were trying to condense the list to make them readable. You also mentioned something very quickly about my list where I don't have sky pikes. I would take sky pikes if you're doing it. I was originally, when I was building them, I was very lazy and didn't build sky pikes, and which is why I don't have sky pikes on my Argonauts. That was kind of just a quirk of just never revisiting the Argonauts when I've already painted them.
Yeah,
and that's a very first edition way of building those Argonauts.
Yes, yes. And then the Thunderers with rifles just for the 18-inch range. Yeah. The special weapons do more work, but 18 inches means you're fairly safe. from your opponents.
Depending on what you're doing with your Admon as well. If you get those guys on -2 rend, they can do some work. They can only do it once, but they can do a lot of work.
-2 rend with the sun, so effectively rend 3.
Yeah.
With the triumph that he's almost guaranteed to get.
Yeah, 1955 points. We sort of glossed past that quickly, but that's a very nice point.
That's
value to get.
Yeah, 60 is a lot of people who are going for a triumph vid is 1960. So I've gone just 5 points below that. So
you like the Thunderers worked for you? You wouldn't if you did it again, would you replace them with Balloon Boys, Endriggers or Skywardens, or keep the Thunderers?
In Zilfin, I would keep the Thunderers just because when you fly high in the hero phase, you can deploy them out and then have a screen. They're kind of there just to absorb the shock into the Ironclad. If I didn't have that option and they had to stay within the boat, I would consider maybe using the Bubble Boys just so that they can create a mobile screen in front of whatever is trying to get at you. There's so many fast-moving melee armies nowadays that you need something that just covers your butt when they try to get into you.
Yeah, I guess if you're high drops as well, if you're playing with the threat of being double turned, you want to be further away, and then you need to have a screen as well because things will cross that distance. And at least then you've got a screen that has +1 attack when they unleash hell.
And it has 20 wounds instead of 6.
Yes.
Yeah, I usually bury the chemist somewhere inside that 10-man unit as well, so it just makes it harder.
-2 to hit. Yeah. I know you don't have the
-1 because no fumigators. But...
No fumigators, I just needed the extra output.
Old school. No.
Very old school. Like I said, I didn't have...
It's such a hero killer. I'm going to move extra 6, and I'm going to charge you here. Like, what? D6 mortal wounds, plus the bomb. Your hero's dead.
Yeah. Didn't have very much practical application for KO in kind of the new 3.0, 3.1-ish that we're in. So I kind of reverted back to what I knew in AOS 2 and a little bit earlier. So that's kind of where the list is kind of settled in.
Quite often it does make more sense just to play what you know how to play rather than this thing that you theory crafted perfectly in your head but don't have experience in. Things don't always work in theory when it comes to putting them on the table.
And then the other thing is the Master of the High Airs. It'll come back to bite me in the butt at some point in the future, so we'll talk about that when we get to it. There's really no good options. Well, killing all battle line could potentially be doable, but it's highly dependent on your opponent's lists. And I wanted something that wasn't interactable. Yes, they can kill some of your units, but you can kind of control it.
What about take what's theirs? That's what I usually choose.
Yeah, I only have 2 boats. And so if they've done 8 wounds to the Ironclad, it's, they could potentially shut it off. The Gun Hauler, I use it even as a screen for the Ironclad as well because of the high drops. So I don't have a lot of things that can get to my opponent's zone. Ones that or lists that have quite a few more boats, I would take it all day. But I don't have that option. So
it's if the Ironclad is alive, it's an easy one because you have easily 3 units inside. So it's 4 units, boom, done.
Yeah.
And even if it can't fly, you can add D6 move, run it 6. It's still getting somewhere.
Yeah. There are battle plans that are very, very tight in terms of.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're playing Realmstone Cash, that's not.
That's all. But that's a great one for KO if you can, because you can reach everything in their deployment.
Yeah, and I was worried about late game scoring as well. If I'm in their zone, potentially couldn't score the objectives. And so I wanted something that I could do even late without sacrificing the objective play. This tournament, I will say, was Grand Strategy was the first tiebreaker after win-loss, and then Battle Tactics was afterwards. So I wanted something that I could potentially do even losing if I don't have very much left on the board.
Yeah, it's fair.
And you went with the battle ram, so a very aggressive ironclad as opposed to the last word.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would change that out 100%.
Okay.
I mean, it is great if you like need something dead and it has a couple of wounds and you just smash it,
because you've got the Spar torpedo as well, so you can
and the
charge
Spar torpedo
both
and bombs, and then you have the admiral with flaming weapon.
Yeah,
with,
I was scared of
so.
I was scared of doing Night Haunt if there's like a unit that I chose like gaining momentum or something that I needed to kill, and there's like 2 ghosts left, and I'm just throwing hundreds of shots at it, and they're just rolling 4-ups, like just battle ram it, and it's dead. But yeah, the practical application of it is much harder than the theoretical, just because you don't want to be that close to melee armies, and that's kind of what's rampant nowadays.
I guess again, maybe with your drop count, it works better with a lower drop count list, but when you're a higher drop count list, you've got the risk of being double turned. You need to have the distance and then
correct.
So you'd rather have last word going forwards then.
Yes, going forwards. Yeah, definitely.
It works well, especially if you have custom Skyport where you have the retreat and run and shoot and charge.
Correct.
Once per game, which is awesome with a battle ram, because people are surprised that the ironclad can move 20 inches and then ram and then charge you, re-rolling with the navigator. So
or if something's in contact.
Stuff, but last word is just unbeatable. That's
it's
20 shots, 2 damage. If you charge me, I had that the other game, 2 full minutes to charge me, they both died. Just boom, unleash hell and last word.
But the weird thing is about last word as well is if you've got the purple sun and it's their turn, they're like move the purple sun towards your ironclad, but then I also want to charge the ironclad, and then they charge the ironclad and go into range of the purple sun and be -1. So then you'll shoot them twice while they're -1 to save. So it just makes your last word better if they move the purple sun towards you.
And the fact that you have reroll 1s against flyers also in the charge phase. You can use a gold, a triumph in the charge phase, +1 to wound or from the chemist to reroll.
And you get double
ones on the weapon that you're shooting twice with last words. So.
Sorry, Quan, what were you saying?
Oh yeah, just you'd get double duty from that ether gold because you're shooting that gun twice.
Yeah.
The chemist one, especially because the chemist to get rid of his gold, you're always competing with spending gold from other units because it's mostly in the shooting. Because he's not going to do the inspiring presence one. Because why would he? He's a single model. So reroll charges with a chemist. I don't know if you ever get in that position. So to spend his gold for your strategy, you're always competing with all the other stuff in the army does.
Well, I normally spend my gold on the chemist to buff a unit that's inside the ship.
Yeah, in the hero phase.
Which you could. In this case, you could do it on the Thunderers.
Thunderers give them, because then they get to shoot with their gold to be +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and reroll 1s to wound.
Yeah, I found the Admiral is actually the guy who I had trouble spending gold for.
Because he hasn't got his own triumphs. He hasn't got guild triumphs.
we need Admiral.
He wounds on 2s already.
Archanaut triumphs. But then the ships could use them. Well, except for the gun holders, but because they're Archanaut ironclads and Archanaut frigates, so that'd be cool.
If you roll well on your first charge roll, you don't want to just spend it just to re-roll, just to spend it. So again, in combination with the Grand Strat, he was the hardest guy to get rid of. It usually was just
his pistol only wounds on the 4, I think.
Yeah, so but it's 9-inch range, so you have to it's fairly close.
And then it's competing with using other,
especially exactly.
Yeah,
that's why Masters of the Hires, it's interesting one. But if you have a lot of units with gold, you might struggle, to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, it's also it's a bit of a knife edge thing as well, because you burn too much gold early on, and then they start killing your units that have got gold left.
Which is fine. If they're dead, then that's fine for the strategy. They're either dead or they spent the gold.
But you still got to use a gold in your last round, in the last round, haven't you?
If you table your opponent, you can't. If you table them turn 4, you can't score actually, unless you had the gold on the heroes left. But if the Arcanauts, the Thunders, the Gunhauler, the Ironclad had the gold, and you've tabled your opponent like by 4, yeah, you can't score your grand strat. So, you know, with having now practical experience, I don't know if I would take that grand strategy again.
It's good in a all ships list.
I think maybe technically you can use the shooting one even if there's no targets. Technically, like
I think it's when you shoot, you use it.
Yeah, you pick them to shoot. You say,
if you can't pick a target, you can't shoot.
Yeah,
you just
because that's
it's not a start of thing.
It's the same as the Kronspine using all-out attack, even though it doesn't have a shooting weapon to give +1 attack, +1 to hit for as a bubble. So you can't do it if you don't have a valid target
which is a shame. All attack on all your units for 1 point spin.
Yeah. It's certainly like I think you make an argument for it, and then a TO will just come in and say no anyway.
Yeah, no.
No, you can't. I looked into it. You can't because you need to make a shooting.
Of course you have, man. Of course you have.
I have as well.
Yeah. I have because that's. I mean, my 2 Ironclads getting +1 to it for free, basically.
Yeah, because you definitely can't do it with the melee one because you can't pick a unit to fight if they're not within 3 inches. But
you would need everyone like within the 10-inch aura, wholly within the 10-inch aura next to the Kronspine fighting. Why would and the navigate the Admiral gets a +1 to hit against monsters and heroes anyway, so not really worth it. How did you find only the Admiral being able to issue commands to the Kronspine? So you always needed to be wholly within 12 of him because he's not the general.
I usually don't issue anything to it.
Reroll. I mean, reroll charges anyway, so you don't need.
Reroll charges. +1 hit's kind of the biggest thing for the reliability. The 3s and 3s fall down so easily, but like I said, I use it more of as a defensive counter piece as opposed to a melee wrecking ball. And so he just kind of hangs around and just threateningly looks at people.
Which also makes sense why if you keep him close, like in your backline or as a counter piece, why you chose the Admiral to have it, because he has his free up bodyguard and he doesn't die. Because often you actually want the hero to die. You want it to wild because it's so much better if it's wild, because it run and charge. It can run and charge, and it gets a +1 to hit. So it's much more dangerous. And since you still use it when moving it, you can always move it away from your own pieces.
I have thrown the Admiral into something to get it killed, and because it is a beat stick, it'll do damage on the way out, and most people have to throw something significant at him. If you Finest Hour him and he all-out defenses, they have to throw something significant to kill him anyways. So now you've both made your Kronspine wild, you've tied up a massive threat on their end, and you've dealt damage, which is why I bonded it to the Kronspine. I used to have him bonded to the Chemist, kind of an original draft, just to increase that range much further, but the +1 to hit is great, but it's not necessary.
But there's a bit of a danger as well, because people are already potentially going to be targeting the Chemist anyway. Giving them another reason to target it potentially is not that great, because then
wild.
But if it goes wild, where it's next to you, all your stuff is also not great. But
you want it to go wild?
To be honest, it's not an issue, because you still control the movement. It moves 12 inches. You can easily move it away.
Yeah.
And if it actually charges your stuff, you can always re-roll the charge to something lower, because you can always re-roll the charge, and then it doesn't do anything.
They missed a trick with it, and they should have made it when it is wild. It gets moved by the player who's turn it.
Then no one would use it.
Oh,
and you won't use it.
Which is actually a great segue to the first game, because it did go wild, and I decided to do some really
let's have
cheeky things, I guess.
Okay. Very quickly then, because we have got a question from the chat, which is why the Sky Cannon on the Gunhauler?
I just like the spike damage on the D6 if I need to, just threaten something. That's it. And plus, that's what I originally built. So most of the answers of why the quirks of my list is because that's what I built originally at the very, very outset of the release, and haven't had a chance to revisit and retweak the list. I did own 2 frigates at one point. I will say this quick aside story. They're both lost now. In terms of one was knocked by a kid and then shattered on the floor, and then the other fell in between the slats of a staircase, and so there's a FLG close by to where I live called Sword and Board. If you shine a light underneath the stairs, you can see my frigate down there.
No.
It's just still there. They haven't even.
It's still there after like 2 or 3 years or so.
But by the law of the Kharadron Code, it's fair salvage down there.
Yeah,
if you can get it, it's yours.
Yeah, it's like the stairs were built. There's 2 like brick walls, and then they just put slats of wood as the staircase, so you actually can't get underneath the stairs.
Oh, okay.
I've asked them, and they said no, so they can't get it there. So that's why I don't have frigates, and that's why Sky Cannon.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. So let's move on to the first game then, which is against Sylvaneth. So all the trees.
Interesting.
And so this was a 1-drop, also at 1955 points, which is annoying. With a Warsong Revenant as the general, with Spell Singer, Command Trait, and Arcane Toe, and Tree Song spell, Tree Lord Ancient with Regrowth, an Arch Revenant, 9 Kernoth Hunters with scythes, not ciphers. That's a Pokemon.
There it is.
There's the typo for the show. And 2 units of 5 Tree Revenants, 10 Dryads, Ravanax Gnashing Jaws, and Spite Swarm Hive, all in Battle Regiment, which is why it's 1-drop. Before we actually talk about the game, do you know much about Sylvaneth? Did you sort of look at this list and have any sort of initial reactions to it?
Yeah, so it took us about a 9-hour drive to go from Toronto to where Summer Slaughter was, so we had plenty of time to just digest lists. And I have this thing where it occurs where I'll look at a thing and be like, that's one I don't want to play, and that's probably what my first game will be. So I was very, very aware of what this list does. Jordan plays something fairly similar. I think Sylvaneth is a difficult matchup for KO. They can save stack so well. The 9 Kernoth Hunters is something that generally you can't deal with. If they're in the trees, +1 save, all out defense, plus a Spite Swarm Hive gives them reduced rend by 1, so you have nothing to answer for on a 2-up save, mashy model unit. So plus the Warsong Revenant with his bomb Spell Singer just means that he just does so many mortals to your Ironclad and everything inside. So I was very, very afraid of playing this list. The only thing that I saw a light when the matchup was announced was it was in Silk Steel Nest, so there was 8 objectives, and he doesn't have that many models or units on the board to really cap all the points. So I could play a more nuanced game where I just teleport around and capture objectives and potentially burn them and get ahead that way.
I mean, through his trees and with Tree Revenants, he can do something very similar.
Correct. But because I have shooting, I can just kill the Tree Revenants and then dance around after that.
Yeah, and the Ironclad ignores the Wildwood line of sight blocking.
Correct.
So my opponent, everything inside ignores it as well.
Yeah,
which is handy. But one thing I want to point out, and I want to appreciate, if we go back one slide, is the name of the player.
Oh yes, Nick Grimnir. Yeah.
Cool name.
If that's your name.
Well, Max, if you like that, you're going to like some more stuff going on later because there's a lot of dwarfs.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, interesting. Plus, summoning trees is, we cannot land within 1 inch of these trees, and I think they can summon them 3 inches away from other stuff. So they can block areas where Ironclad can go.
Yeah, and they have the choice of just whether they want to put a group of 3 or 2 or even just one.
Yeah, even the single one.
Yeah, just a single one, and it's not even they can't fit trees there because they can just put one down if they want to. So That's really annoying. So
that
I mean,
the Wizard's Bomb it does so much against Ironclads, and because you have so much stuff stuck in one spot on the board, it just hits everything.
Yeah. And they're perfectly positioned to deal with the Incarnate as well. Teleport, charge, strike and fade, de-level it, and you don't have a recourse towards it. So it was like a list that's very, very well tailored against mine. I will point out another spelling error there. It's after burning, not adter burning.
Oh, I see. Yeah, there's also like formatting issues all over the place here.
I can forgive that. The
formatting issues
is the one that kind of jumped out at me. And so so my game plan going into it was kill the Tree Revenants, maybe the Dryads, and then just leave everything else, and then try to teleport around, drop units here and there that he, with a 9 Kurnoth Hunter unit, he can target one a turn and delete it, but you can't be everywhere at once.
So you alluded to an issue with, I can't remember what you said now, about the Cron Spine going wild on this game.
Yeah, so after we deployed, he kept asking who the Cron Spine was bonded to. Now my Cron Spine was within 3 of 10 Arcanauts, which if I lose, whatever, they die. But I was screening them for the potential Kurnoth Hunter. So my opponent took first and then proceeded to use Spell Singer, which allows them to cast spells through any wood, to throw the Ravanax Gnashing Jaws all the way across from the top left of the map all the way to the bottom right of the map, and use the bomb and the Kurnoth and the shooting from the Tree Lord Ancient. I was passing off wounds because of passing off wounds. You do it 1 wound at a time. I was doing it so that I don't kill my own things, but keeping some stuff alive. And ended up having so much damage that I was like, forget it. It's not worth keeping the Admiral alive. And then so my Admiral was dead turn 1. He took the top of the turn. He wasn't very experienced with KO, and I was kind of rubbing my hands at the double turn, which my list usually isn't able to do because of the high drops. Most experienced players will give you first and then will try to double you. But he took first and killed the Admiral, made my Incarnate wild, and my Incarnate was kind of unlocked and ready to go for the rest of the game. The other mistake he did on his turn as well is you can only control endless spells if they're within 30 of the wizard that cast them, because he launched it so far across the board. On my turn, I was actually able to move the Ravanax Gnashing Jaws. And Kurnoth being a 5-inch move meant that I rolled a 14 and did 9 mortal wounds to his own Kurnoth. It also meant that my Incarnate was able to run and charge onto his Ravanax and eat it and level up immediately. So
and I had to pile into something else.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and piled in and killed the Tree Lord Ancient right off the bat. Then I played the nuanced game where I basically teleported. Now I got extremely lucky because I teleported where his bunker was, where the Dryads were, and the Warsong Revenant, and I identified that as the next threat that I would go after, because I can't just punch through the Kurnoth. And I put in 9 wounds into the Warsong Revenant with just a 24-inch range shooting guns from the Ironclad. And the Warsong Revenant has a 4-up ward, and he failed all of them. That thing just died right off the bat. I had called out the Admiral as 2+ no ward, just to threaten his Warsong, and I think that's why he was so afraid of it. His game plan was built around that bomb and the 9 Kurnoth, and so he was. I think that's why he threw so much at the Admiral to try to kill him. And then after that stroke of luck, I basically was able to just again dance around and take objectives and take it. And his Kurnoths were still killing 1 unit a turn. And around turn 3 or turn 4, I was able to catch the Kurnoths with my Incarnate far away from woods, and so he wasn't able to retreat. And because it was level 3 at that point, it would take him the full game to kill the Incarnate while I take objectives. I didn't have very much left at the end. Ironclad, Incarnate, and I think the Navigator. But it did.
Just half your list.
Yeah.
Fair.
It do a cheeky thing where I dropped my navigator out and then charged it with my wild incarnate, since he has to charge within 12 after he runs the charges, so that I can pile into my opponent and then catch the Kurnos that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
So my understanding of Sylvaneth is that if you're within 3 inches of a tree, you turn it off.
Correct.
So could you have worked around that with the Kurnoffs?
Yeah. So the tree thing is because they covered so much of the board. There was like tree because they choose overgrown terrain feature, and this particular board had a massive piece both in the middle.
Okay.
So they had so much options with the 1 trees that he's had summoned that if I didn't have enough units to cover it, to turn it off. And I was trying to smash to rubble the trees, but now we know that doesn't work at all. So
yeah.
So for another thing from the FAQ is just, does this do anything? No.
Yeah, it does.
No. Okay. Yeah. So was it relatively close with the scoring then towards the end?
No. Unfortunately, at like round 3 or 4, because I had both the Gunhauler and the Ironclad alive, I was just taking 1-2 more every single turn and denying him. And because I killed the Dryads and the Tree Revenants as well on the first turn, he didn't have any GVs, so my Arcanauts were just hopping from objective to objective. And when I would leave one open, I would just choose it as the proving ground, because I was just giving him the turn at that point. Once his 2 threats of the Warsong Revenant and the Tree Lord Ancient and his capping units were dead. Once he had the 9 Kurnos left, I wasn't really threatened if he killed something, because I could just fly away and enact my game plan.
Yeah. Nice. Any questions, guys, about this game? Or... Nope. I don't know. Okay, let's move on to game 2 then. Unless there's anything you wanted to add, Carl?
No. I was sweating the whole time. It was in the basement. So oddly enough, just a small anecdote. Summer Slaughter had 102 players. The bottom 50, I would say actually 75% of people played in the basement. And then if you're in the top, quote unquote, top tables, you got to play in the second floor, which is much more air conditioned. So my first game was in the basement, and it was terrible. The ceilings were low, and yeah, there's a lot of people.
Yes,
you try and fight your way out of there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. People just kept yelling, "I escaped!" when they were going off the table. It was actually a fun little addition to it.
Yeah, good incentive not to lose. Once you get out, like, don't lose and go back down. Cool. So the next game, game 2, was against Cities of Sigmar, and we have a little picture of an Iron Drake there for good reason, because this list is called Three Dwarfs Down. It's Tempest Eye. The Generals of Rune Lord, the Command Trait Hawkeye, the +1 to wound, Patrician's Helm, which, if I remember correctly, is the Battle Shock one.
Immunity,
yeah. And his prayer is Curse, and then she has a Rune Sun as well, which is allied in. 10 Longbeards as the Honoured Retinue for passing off wounds to, 20 Iron Drakes, 20 Hammerers, 10 Grandstock Thunderers with rifles, I assume, 10 Half-Guard Berserkers with broadaxes, and an Ironclad, all in Battle Regiment for 1 drop. So just share some
Max, what were you doing here?
Yeah.
It's an interesting list. I was expecting a bridge.
Yeah. Yep.
To move either the Hammers to get them charged. Oh, please. Or to move the Iron Drakes into position to shoot stuff with their 6-inch guns. So, yeah, interesting. It's a very, except the Ironclad, it's a very slow list. Yes, they get +3 move and they can run and shoot first turn, but after that, there's not much movement going on. Yeah, I'm interesting to see how this played, because I'm tinkering around with 20 Hammers again, because their output can be very good if you use all of the right buff pieces.
There's not a huge amount of buff pieces in this list, though.
No, basically the Rune Sun sticks with the Hearthguard, giving them a 4-up ward, and they give him a 3+ bodyguard, because the Royal Retinue rule is on their War Scroll, so that works, and I think they are perfect 400 points, but the two units together, because he's 80 and the 10 should be 320.
Should say allies there.
Yeah, so they are perfect 400 points, that group, which is, they're not bad. Still, broad axis, 1 rend, 2 damage. And the Rune Lord basically gives the rend to either the hammers or the Iron Drakes. Hawkeye gives +1 to wound to the Iron Drakes. Longbeards give them reroll 1s to wound. So he did those 3 units are what make the Iron Drakes good. And then the Ironclad just jumps around with the Thunders on a 2+ save first turn, basically.
Yeah, but it's a shame there's no hero there to go in the Ironclad.
No, but then you need, if you want the hero, so 3 units, you need 12 units in total, which is
a lot.
With the cost of these units, Iron Drakes and Hammers being very expensive, it's hard to fit in.
I mean, it's not a 2+ save anyway, so it potentially doesn't need one out defense anyway, if you're being careful with it.
The Ironclad? Yeah, the shame is that what you cannot do anymore, Coalition cannot be your general anymore. You used to have Hawkeye. To have Hawkeye on the KO hero, and he just tag along with the
and you get a bigger aura because it's
and you get
from the Ironclad.
+1 to wound for all the shooting, which is great because you don't get gold in this list. But yeah, I'm interested to hear how this played.
So Carl, I'm guessing you knew what some of it does because it's KO. At least. How did you have any expectations about this going into it, or?
Yeah, so I was very, very worried going into it. I was looking at the list. I had finished my first game relatively early, and Anna actually finished her game earlier than me. I think I had an hour and a half left in the round, and she had finished it earlier. So I was like, how did someone finish earlier than I did? So when pairings were announced, we had a nice 45-minute break in between each round.
That's nice.
So there was quite a bit of time to socialize and look at who you're going to be paired into. And when I looked at the list, I didn't fully understand it like Max because there was no bridge. I was looking at it. There's some sort of trick or something that I don't know, and that kind of makes me nervous. I kind of pride myself in knowing everything that my opponent's trying to do and then counter it from that standpoint. So I wasn't quite sure. And then I arrived in the conclusion that Anna probably wanted to do some like a counter offensive where the Hearthguard Berserkers and the Longbeards kind of hold a line, and then when you go into that castle, then everything else like impacts from the back standpoint, both the hammers and the Iron Drakes.
You can do a neat trick with the Longbeards because they're on 25mm bases. You can space them out 1mm each, like a conga line. Having the hammers behind them, then retreat the Longbeards through the hammers because they are also evenly spaced, and then you can charge or go in with the hammers.
Yeah, kind of like a switch
line.
It's
like a mesh. They go through each other, which people don't expect. I think.
How does that work now with the new coherency rules? Because obviously you can do it in the middle of the conga line, but the ends must make it a bit awkward.
Yeah, they're just trying.
Yeah, you have free at the end somehow, but it works.
Yeah,
it works for the majority.
But the hammers, the hammers, they want a Warden King to give them an extra attack, basically.
For sure. So yeah, going into the game, I kind of expected that. Was given the first turn with it being a 1-drop. Screened very well. The Ironclad was obviously at the very, very corner, so I couldn't throw the sun at it and potentially just take it off. Playing in that is fast because it's so deep in the zone. Screened with the Longbeards, and actually the Hammers was the other screen, and then the Hearthguard were slightly behind that. Okay. And then the Iron Drakes were slightly behind that as well. And so with me not being sure how Anna was going to play, I just played very, very conservative turn 1 and just decided to try to kill the hammers, which I was able to do while screening the Ironclad from the 12-inch range shots of the other Ironclad, and basically mitigating the Iron Drakes because I knew that they were going to move 7 and shoot 16. And so it would only be in a double turn that Anna would, do quite a bit of damage to me, and I was okay with that. And so, yeah, her first turn wasn't anything spectacular because of the mitigation that I did from being all the way in the corner, and she had played to play for the double. Unfortunately, didn't get the double. I had won it on a tie. The Incarnate went into the Iron Drakes. I summoned the sun and killed her Ironclad with the sun.
With a roll of 1.
With a roll of 1.
No.
And at that point, it's just basically clean up. The Hearthguard Berserkers were out of position. So, they're never going to catch an Ironclad ever.
Not in this list, no.
Yeah, if I don't allow it to. And so I just played clean up at that standpoint. I didn't even play the objectives until turn 3 or 4. But yeah, with the Zilfin move, I didn't do it turn 1, so I was able to close in on the Ironclad really, really easily. And even if it didn't blow up from the Purple Sun, the amount of shooting from both the Gun Hauler, the Ironclad, and the Thunderers, I think would be able to do it without the hero, like you were saying, Max, to give it all out defense. It would just be a 4-up plus my rend. So it would go down pretty easily. Because
obviously they only get the +1 save in the first round, so
correct.
That would have been round 2.
Yeah,
I don't know if there would have been. Obviously there's no hero in the ship. Would they have a hero nearby to give it all out defense? Or
no, the Rune Lord was off trying to support the Iron Drakes. The Rune Sun was with the Hearthguard, and then the Ironclad was slightly out of position. Was maybe 1 or 2 inches off from the aura of the Rune Lord at that point. And so I had focused my attention on that flank to try to kill the Ironclad, and I knew after the Ironclad's down that I can play, I can just teleport around and take objectives because the rest of the army is very, very slow.
So even without the roll of 1, that Ironclad would have been on -1 save and without all out defense.
Yeah. So I actually wasted all the shots from the Thunderers. I wasted all the shots from the Gun Hauler, and I only had the 24-inch range shots from the Ironclad at that point because it just died, and I had anticipated.
Well, you could have done the 30-inch shot, the single one.
Yeah, I did ended up shooting the 30-inch range shot at the Rune Lord, and it went through, and he died too. So
nice.
Yeah.
So
flat 6 damage.
Yeah, flat 6 damage. With all attack, it was 3s and 2s still. So it was a fairly quick game. Anna's more of a 40k player who's just recently coming over to Age of Sigmar, and so took what she had thought was a basket of good stuff, dwarf good stuff, and just kind of threw them in a list.
She's got good taste. We'll give her that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just to correct one thing, actually the Iron Drakes turn 1 they have a 30-inch threat range because they get a +3 move, so 7 +1 from the banner. +1 from Tempest. They always get +1 to run, so that's 8 inches. They can run all to 6, so 14. They can run and shoot with the command ability, and the 16-inch, so 30 inches.
So I made
most
that
people
mistake.
don't do it because then it's only 1 shot. What you want to do is not move them, but set them up with the bridge, so they will get 2 shots.
Yeah. So I did make that mistake in my game too. I was like 23 inches, and then I left the Incarnate to be shot on turn 1, but with 1 shot, it wasn't enough damage to de-level it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So I think. Did you use the Admiral munition on the Hearthguard?
I
remove the ward.
tried to.
When that happens, they just die like flies.
You roll a 1.
You roll a 1.
No. I tried to, but Anna had already conceded by that point. Because that was the only unit that she had, and
because that's
it's the only unit
it's a very
you can remove
unit.
the ward as well.
It's a very tanky unit, and then it's just 20 wounds on a 5+, like poof.
I do have a question, which is actually more about the battle plan. Did anyone use the Nidus baths?
Yes, I did see people use it.
Yes,
but not in your game.
effectively.
How?
Not effectively. I saw someone. I was watching a game of Nighthaunt versus Nighthaunt, and one of the Nighthaunt players had used the Nidus Path A to get to the other Nidus Path A.
Okay.
But it took them 2 turns to set it up, and then it was like just fell flat because the opponent had already moved away, so they couldn't even charge when they're wholly set up 6. So it took them another turn to move the 20 ghosts into close to the objective. But at that point, their objective had already collapsed. So if you could move after you use Nidus Pass, like you'd see play with it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I mean, you can move there and then teleport, but
okay.
Usually you place a single unit, like you string it out from the objective towards within 9 inches of the corner, then that rule has no effect the entire game.
Yeah, my navigator was sitting on the Nidus Path just so that her slow dwarves couldn't teleport over and shoot me from the back end.
Yeah.
We can potentially do a sneaky thing with the ships because you could teleport ship through it and then get units out.
Oh yeah,
but you can just fly high to probably somewhere better anyway. I asked about it because you made it sound like the half guard were kind of further back.
Not sure you can actually, Lee, because it's the end of movement phase that you teleport.
And then you just use the normal garrison rules to get out at the end of the movement phase. You wouldn't move afterwards because you can't move at the end of the movement phase.
There's so much like just trying.
Just move. Just move.
It's not worth it, especially in Zilfin where you could just hero phase.
Yeah.
No, the only use these paths have is the B ones.
Yeah.
Where you can. There's a proving ground. Okay, I'll go to the other side.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the half guard because you kind of made them sound like they're behind screens and quite deep. I wondered if she had this plan that she was going to maybe try and send them through.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why I just stuck my navigator there and kind of got stuck in the back.
It's like my 85-point hero now means that you're whatever how many
400
points 400 points are wasted being back there now.
And I didn't really care to half the movement of the Ironclad.
Also, can you move multiple units or just one?
Just one, I think.
Well, then why? Because then the Rune Sun is not coming.
Yeah.
And then there's no ward on them.
Yeah.
So
maybe one turn and then on the double turn get the Rune Sun.
I don't see people setting that up.
I have no idea.
Just
walk
straight across the board. You're faster that way.
Yeah. Well, maybe not for dwarves.
In Tempest Die, yes.
Tempest Die, they're quite quick.
Although the Fyreslayers don't get the bonus, so
I
don't know.
But,
okay.
Well, they can still spend a CP to run, can't they? Cool. Next game was against Skaven. The Rat Boys, the Dirty Rats. No dwarves in this one, unfortunately, Max. So they're the Verminlord Walkbringers, General, with Devious Adversary, which I have no idea what that does.
Plus 2 attack if
plus 2 attack.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You guys know. Warpstone Charm, Flaming Weapon, Franquil, Master Molder, Grey Seer with Skitterleap, and Skaven Brew, and another Grey Seer with Death Frenzy. 2 units of 20 Clan Rats and Expert Conquerors, and 4 Rat Ogres and Bounty Hunters. 10 Plague Bearers and Bounty Hunters, and a Warp Grinder, a Purple Sun, and Lawson the Soul Seeker. Bringy Dingy.
Tranquil Skateboard.
So he's got lots of movement shenanigans.
The Expert Conquerors.
Expert.
What? Where?
In the corner.
Oh, okay. I was looking under Clan Rats.
Expert.
I like this game.
Yeah. We should keep score.
Like the end of the year, we get a prize.
Who catches the most?
Interesting list.
I mean,
two Grey Seers are great. The foot ones are good.
Mm-hmm.
The Molder, I think he can give +3 to the Rat Ogres, and I assume they still played it with if they get +3 to charge, everyone gets the +3 to charge.
Correct.
Because with Tanko and the Verminlord and Grey Seers, he has enough Master Clan heroes, so he gets that bonus.
Yep.
He unlocks that.
Although that's been FAQ'd now, but obviously that was since the tournament.
Yeah. And Warp Grinders are pretty cool because you can basically deep strike stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
And sensor bearers and bounty hunters are scary. Yeah.
So it's so both of us were 10 drop, and we were playing in Prize of Galley, depending on your pronunciation. And so Matt was aware that because of the Zilfin move, I can get very deep, and I had warned him about the no ward, so either the Warbringer or Thankful would potentially be dead if he had given me first. He had won the roll off for priority, and deployed very aggressively, which signaled to me that he was going to go first. Both the Warbringer and Thankful were on the line, and so I deployed very, very defensively in the center with my 30 Arcanauts screening Incarnate right behind one side, and then the Ironclad and the Gunhauler behind the 30 Arcanauts.
Where did he place his no-holds?
So he placed it 3 inches away from my line on the left-hand side and 3 inches away from my line on the right-hand side as well. So that I couldn't turn them off. And then,
were they sort of in front of the objective? Or?
No, they need to be wholly within 8 of the
edge.
Edge,
yeah.
Oh, you mean here? Sorry.
In front of my
in front of the
zone.
blue, on top of the blue line.
You mean? Oh, so you mean this edge?
Correct. And then mirrored on the other end, and then one obviously in his zone somewhere.
In his zone, so he gets a +1 to cast.
Yeah. So yeah, Matt just signaled to me that he wanted to be super duper aggressive with how he. That's basically how I had the. Yeah, how I had the point.
Gunhauler was a bit weird.
That's why people watch this show.
Yeah.
And so I knew he was going to be very, very aggressive. And so I played very defensive. And he had put his 10 Plague Sensor Bears with the Warp Grinder. So those things are so much attacks. 4 attacks apiece, -1/2 damage. And
especially if he gets the a 10-inch charge on the rats.
Yeah.
And then they can, from deep striking, they get a 10-inch charge.
And so he had
scary.
Put Death Frenzy on the Rat Ogres, and was casting all his spells. I was off of Unbind range, and I was like, okay, I've made a good castle. Let's see. I'm anticipating the 30 Arcanauts are going to be dead, and then I have to fight out a castle, and he's going to score bigger than me, and I'll just play a longer game. And it kind of went sideways a little bit. The Vermin Lord went on the left-hand flank. Thankful used the skateboard to go into right in front of my Arcanauts. And then he brought up the Plague Sensor Bears from Jeep Strike in front, beside Thankful. Now, he had moved Thankful very hesitantly. He moved him so that he was still within 3 of Laocoon, because you have to get out of the Laocoon outside of 9. He moved him so he was within 8, so he can barbecue the front rank of Arcanauts, but still within 3 of Laocoon, just so that he can teleport him away on during my turn. But it meant that he was within 9, and so I redeployed backwards, and so only 2 Arcanauts were within range of Thankful instead of the full 10 if he had moved straight into me. And so again, he killed the 2 Arcanauts with the barbecue. I removed them so that the Kron Spine was exposed, but not the boats. He had whipped their Rat Ogres, and their Rat Ogres, of course, what did they do? Roll boxcars. So with +3, it was a 15-inch charge for his whole entire army. And so the Plague Sensor Bears went into that little tiny hole that I had created. Well, actually, no. The 2 Arcanaut units had maybe a 125 millimeter base in between them, and he used that to just launch 1 Plague Sensor Bear through each one. I was like, I'm safe. That gap is so small that I don't need it. And he just launched all 10 of them into the Gunhauler. He was afraid of the Unleash Hell from the Ironclad. And so didn't fully maximize his charge. The Warbringer went into my left flank. Thankful was right in the middle, and the Rat Ogres were into my Kron Spine. And so I wasn't feeling great after that. And because of how the activations in that combat went. He had tried to activate the Warbringer first so that he could pile in the sensor bearers, because rats can pile in twice if because of Master Clan, and he had to try to pile in more sensor bearers into the Ironclad, trying to turn off my Fly High. But that did mean that Mr. Hammerman himself was able to go first, and he was able to kill I think 6 or 7 Plague Sensor Bears by himself. And so the threat of the Sensor Bears turning off my Fly High was gone. Instead of him just piling in the 4 or 5 that he had originally, instead of trying to get greedy and get all 10 in. And so I was in a safe zone. The Arcanauts on the left actually survived the Warbringer for no good reason. There was one guy just hanging out, so he was kind of stuck a little bit. Thankful didn't kill the 10-man screen, had 2 left, so both those big threats were stuck. So on my turn, I had to make a decision. I had called the no ward munition. So do I kill the Warbringer or do I kill Thankful? I decided on Thankful because of the spell casting, the pluses to spell casting. Because the one guy was tying up the Warbringer, I wasn't really too afraid of him doing anything on my turn. And on a double turn, I could potentially kill him too. And then at that point, he has no threats because the sensor bearers were dead. So killed Thankful and obviously lost the roll off. So there was a game. He got into the gun hauler. The gun hauler got lifted by the Warbringer. The Rat Ogres had de-leveled the Incarnate on my turn. And because he was killing them and they had Death Frenzy on them, he was just attacking my Incarnate like twice, basically. And so the Incarnate was gone on the second turn. So I basically had the Ironclad, the 10 Thunders, and maybe 13 Arcanauts left. On my second turn. As I predicted, I was able to take off the Warbringer because of the help of the sun. It didn't roll a 1, just a -1 in of itself. And at that point, he basically had no threats. He had 2 Rat Ogres left out of the 4. The Master Molder can bring back a full Rat Ogre unit on the 3-up. So I had won the double from 2 to 3, flew high, killed the Master Molder so that the Rat Ogres couldn't return to full strength, and then played a longer game. If it was a different battle plan where you could score much bigger turn 1, turn 2, even turn 3, because I was only started catching up in turn 4 and 5, because you activate one objective, and if you lose the second priority, you can just activate your home one, and you're in a good spot on the scoring end of things. If it was one that was more neutral and objective, I think I would have lost that game because of how much he pinned me in my deployment zone so early. But because this one is much longer, I was able to activate mine, then activate both the left-hand objective in the center and the right-hand objective in the center. And so I split his forces quite nicely in the triangle and just slowly cleaned up 4 and 5. But yeah, I told Matt if he had activated the sensor bears first, he would have done quite a bit of damage to Ironclad, couldn't fly high, and I couldn't play that game.
Yeah.
So, got a little greedy. Try to get all 10. With 4 attacks apiece, 5 of them would be 20 attacks at -1, 2 damage. Like, could potentially. I had already all out defense the Arcanauts, so he could have done something to my Ironclad quite heavily.
Yeah. It's an interesting battle plan actually, because you can't get ahead that easily in the scoring, but in the first couple of rounds, which sounds like that would have really helped you quite a bit there. But sounds like that was quite a
crazy
game for a little bit.
So Summer Slaughter had free beers, like just free. So with my game with Anna ending quite early, I was just walking around tables drinking, and when I got onto table for table 3, I was not doing well. Just kind of like wavering like left and right, and then as soon as he hit my screen with a 15-inch charge, I asked him if we could take a pause to the game. I went to the washroom, splashed some water in my face, slapped myself a little bit, and I was like, okay, I have to play a game now. I can't just be lackadaisical. I think the success of both game 1 and game 2 ending so early made me too confident in my own abilities, and so game 3 was a sobering experience, literally.
Had to be.
Oh man, 15-inch charge for your whole army is insane. I think he needed like a 13 to get into the castle too, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know,
It was a pretty lucky goal on his part. But
correct.
Skaven aren't going to do that again.
Yeah, it would have been would not have been possible in this new.
Yeah,
Switch up saw the fun and shot it.
Yeah, you can't have the fun.
Fun detected.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is obviously you had the clan rats, which obviously were just sitting, hanging out probably on objectives which weren't activated, which has kind of helped you out a bit, really, because obviously they're sitting there counting as 60 models on an objective, which it's a bit rubbish if that objective doesn't count.
Yeah. I just kept making them proving. I kept activating something and making it a proving ground, so I couldn't just park a Gracier on it, and then use the clan rats as a piece to absorb Unleash Hell or muck about with my plan in the middle. So
yeah, cool. Okay, should we move on then? So
Civil War.
Yeah, here we go. So yeah, the next game was against Kharadron Overlords, and this list is going to be very familiar to anyone that watched last week's show.
Yep.
Because it's basically the same list as Jeremy had, but this is a guy called Joe. To make it. So yeah, I might as well go through it just in case anyone didn't watch last week's show. But it's custom Skyport with the rerolls for the ships against flyers, extra gold. There's no trading with some people. 1960 points, 3 drops. Chemist the General, Collector of Spell in a Bottle, Admiral with Arcane Tome, a Navigator, 3 units of 10 Arcanauts, 2 gun haulers both with dual cannons, 2 frigates, an Ironclad with a Sky Cannon and Battle Ram, a Purple Sun, a Burning Head with Battle Regiment. So 3 drops because the frigates are behemoths, so they can't kill the Battle Regiment. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you would have probably been aware that Jeremy had just won a tournament with this list.
Yep. Sent me the meme.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah,
I'm captain now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very good list. This is how I would play KO if I wasn't playing my version of the list with the custom Skyport, the ships, if I had access to them. I actually, weirdly enough, like this list a little bit better than what I'm running. Because it's classic KO. There's no incarnate to muddy the waters. People like Max can't say, yeah, incarnate Purple Sun the rest of your list. He does have a Purple Sun, but yeah, this is pure KO, and this is what I would like aesthetically a KO army should look. So,
yeah,
very
lots of ships and guys in the ships.
Guys in the ships, yeah.
And the only thing it's missing is some balloon boys for the aesthetics.
Yes. Yes, I do love myself some balloon boys. Own 27 of them. Woo.
Get in line.
Yeah, it's just maybe run 3 or maybe 6 at most.
Maybe 6, but the times where you run 18 of each.
Yeah,
they're long gone. So, were you worried about going to this game, or?
Yeah, I was very worried. I think my list does not do well against this, because the incarnate, if he doesn't let me, is never gonna touch any of the things.
Because you can half move it. Well,
you can half move it with a navigator, and then just play a longer game. And because if he targets the Ironclad and hits at 8 wounds, I can't fly high, and so I'm much more static than he is. And he has all the same things. And also the big thing that when I was assessing his list is the drop count. So he can just if he doubles me, I think the game's over. There's nothing
he can dictate the game, and he has more trading pieces.
Correct. Yeah. He could just send one ship at a time to harass me, and then I deal with that piece, and then he's on one side of the board just capping an objective while I chase him around. Basically what I do to my opponents, but he does it even better. So I was very, very worried. He was very practiced against the Purple Sun, so he put his Arcanauts like basically on the line so that I wasn't able to Purple Sun in the presence of idols. So it's very, very deep deployment. I couldn't just plant it where the ships were and kill ships.
All of them.
Yeah. And so, as expected, he gave me first. I killed the 2 units of 10 Arcanauts and basically told him pass turn. I uncharacteristically ran my Incarnate up as close to the ships as possible, near kind of close to the center, just so that he soaks up fire and hopefully the rest of my ships are unharassed. And that's what Joe did. He half moved my Incarnate and shot it, and then de-leveled it and killed my gun hauler. Now this was a tournament defining moment because I knew that he was going to target the gun hauler because I was using it as a screen on one end and the Arcanauts a screen and the other end, kind of like as a V where my Ironclad was in the middle. I had rolled heroic leadership on my chemist, and so I had 2 CP plus that. And what I told myself at the beginning of the turn was I'm going to use the gold to reroll the charge on my gun hauler, so I can ensure that Master of the High Airs is completed, because he's not going to come into me, and I'm not going to be unleash hell and use a gold in his turn. But dumbly enough, I spent the CP instead of the gold and just failed my grand strategy on the top of 1. Because as expected, he never came into me, or never shot the Arcanauts either, because he was smart enough to identify that if he didn't touch the Arcanauts, I wouldn't be able to spend the gold. And so I was down 3 points basically right on the top of 1. And yeah, he won the double, and I was in a bad spot. At that point, all but 2 Arcanauts were alive. The Ironclad with the heroes. Sorry, the chemist was dead because he shot a frigate at it with the single shot. -2 to hit, went through, rolled a 5 for damage, and so my chemist just got lifted as well inside the boat. So I had the Navigator, the Admiral, the Ironclad. The Kronspine was dead. The Arcanauts were dead. The Thunderers were alive at half strength. And he had everything left. The Arcanauts were dead, but all his ships were alive. And so I was like, how am I going to get out of this? Like, how am I going to win this game? Won the double from 2 to 3. At that point, I was casting Mystic Shield over and over on my Ironclad, and Joe was like, okay, like, I'm not going to touch your Ironclad. I'm just going to kill all the pieces around it. 2-up save is hard to punch through. And I just told myself the only thing that I could do here is cast Purple Sun, because he had come danger close to me, and I rolled an 8, I think, on my Purple Sun, and he failed to unbind it, and my Purple Sun went straight into his Ironclad, and I rolled a 1. The Ironclad. On his turn 2, he had spell in the bottle his Purple Sun, so because it was wild, I got to control his Purple Sun too. Okay. So I moved my Purple Sun, killed his Ironclad, then I moved his Purple Sun, and I killed his frigate.
Oh, that's so stupid.
And I was just looking at him, and I was like, I think we have a game here.
Such a stupid spell.
It is. It is.
Sorry, guys. I need to head off, but it was been great talking to you, Carl.
Thank you, Alex.
Good to have you on, Kron.
Bye, Alex.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
So yeah, just the whole time humming Binary Sunset from Star Wars as I moved 2 suns. And they just both got lifted, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, there's no logically I shouldn't have been able to do that. And then we were still fighting back and forth. My Ironclad was alive, so I was able to take it down 1 boat at a time. But because I had failed my grand strategy very, very early, I was down 3 points. And because of the battle plan, I couldn't make it up super quickly. He was just taking objectives here and there. I didn't have anything to screen his fly highs. All came down to turn 5, where his Admiral and his Navigator were staring down 2 Arcanauts who were, because they were in Expert Conquerors, they were worth 6. And if he had killed them, he would take that point, score more, and take the game basically away from me. Score 2 and score more, which would take the game away from me. But before that happened, I got to move my son, which ended up hitting both the Admiral and the Navigator, and it lifted the Admiral. So the Navigator was left to try to kill 2 Arcanauts, and because he wasn't able to, he killed 1 in shooting, and the other guy survived. And because he's worth 3 to his 2 models, I was able to take the game by 1 point. So yeah, Joe did end up finishing 4th, so his only loss was to me. This list still performs quite well, and if I didn't have the devil on my side in that game, I would have lost and wouldn't be in this position. Maybe Joe would be talking to you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a few key roles there.
Yeah, just
craziness. Sons.
Yeah, 2 sons. I mean, when you have 2 opportunities to roll for sons, it's gonna do some damage, especially when you have big pieces. Yeah. So yeah, escape with that by the skin of my teeth, basically. So.
That's another reason why I don't like the sun, because if your opponent has his, then you could face a situation where they move 2 suns towards you, which is, a third of a chance, basically, to lose.
I believe at the very end he did end up taking my Ironclad down with his Wild Sun. So the kill count of the sun that game was 2 Ironclads, a frigate, an Admiral, I think 5 or 6 Arcanauts as well. Like, it was just a sun game. So
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, insaneness.
It's weird.
I hate it. As a person who likes competitive focused games, that type of randomness, as much as it helped me in this game,
there's not much skill involved. It's just kind of roll a 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's funny because I heard about the killing the Ironclad and the frigate with a purple sun, but out of context, and so I was initially a bit like, well, he outdropped you. He had the units to screen with. How did that happen? Because it didn't happen turn 1. It happened later in the game.
Turn 3.
So by that point, you've lost screens and stuff, and stuff's moved all over the place. You can't plan that far ahead.
And he was kind of going for the killing blow when he doubled me. He was 12-inch range, just coming straight into me to try to finish me off.
He killed your chemist as well. So he took away your option to auto cast it, which then you needed to roll an 8, which is, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not
he played the odds,
Yeah.
which you should every single time, right? And he had an unbind as well, and he had his navigator alive, so he could potentially, if I had rolled an 8, he spent the gold to reroll his unbinding roll smartly. It just wasn't able to get the 9. I think he tied me on an 8 as well.
So
it was
close. I feel bad for him.
Yeah,
I feel really bad for him.
Even like with all that going my way, the Admiral and the Navigator on that point, the Admiral had to make a 3-inch charge to kill those two. To kill those 2 guys.
Even if it had been the other way around, you killed the Navigator, not the Admiral, then the Admiral would have killed those Arcanauts.
100%.
You don't need both heroes; you just need the Admiral, really.
Yeah. So. So I was just like, oh no, that's all my luck. I'm just gonna lose game 5. And going into the tournament, I wasn't quite sure what I was gonna do. I would have been happy with a 3-2. So now that I was 4-0, I was like, whatever game 5 brings me, I'm quite happy with the result.
Yeah. Well, commiserations to Joe. I think maybe he had some bad luck there. I think it would be fair for him to feel hard done by.
There was a side note. Somebody did raffle a purple sun during the tournament. If you had won it, you had to destroy it in front of everybody. So at the very end of the tournament, there was a gentleman who was like 6'5", like massive dude, won the raffle, and he jumped up on stage and jumped down and smashed, like, threw 2 hands down the purple sun, and everybody cheered. So that was very cathartic. I saw Joe in the corner; he was like fist pumping. So it was very nice to have that moment.
So what they should have done was, instead of just raffling it, they should have been the person that lost the most points to a purple sun to do the tournament. Should have been the person that got to smash it.
One of my good friends, Jivan Noah Singh, lost a Maw Crusher round 3, round 4, and round 5 to purple sun. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Auto binds people.
Yeah.
Just make you want
You
to
can't with spell on the bottle.
you can't with spell on the bottom now. I mean, you can
No, spell on the bottom not.
auto dispel the next turn, but I mean, by that point, it's probably potentially done the damage. Unfortunately, just make you wonder because we've got another 6 months of this potentially because we've gone past the FAQ now.
I think the quarterly update will see a change to that.
Hopefully.
Because it used to be if it's more than 10 wounds, you just did D6 mortal wounds or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it used to be at some point, and I would be perfectly fine with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
just change it to something like you roll 2d6, and if you get double ones, because then it's just so rare that it's gonna happen.
I mean, the one is fine, but if you just if you kill one model in a bigger unit, who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll lose an extra model. It's slain. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. I'm fine with that. The big thing is the -1 save.
Yeah, they should probably tie into
this randomness of deleting a Glotkin or
an Ironclad.
An Ironclad or whatever.
It would make sense with Galatian veterans being a thing. It's just being anything over 4 wounds. Then it doesn't slay it. It does something else.
Okay, yeah.
Because then you're also just not randomly losing important linchpin heroes or something. I don't know. That's a little tangent for us there. Okay, so game 5 was against Fyreslayers and more dwarves.
A lot of dwarves.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, now that we're talking about the whole tournament, I played a lot of dwarves.
Yeah. Well, I was putting the screenshot together, and I was like, Max is gonna love this.
Yeah, awesome.
Fyreslayers, playing the famous Bill. It was Zuza, I will say, in the first draft. It was
I fixed that typo.
Yeah. But he's a well-known player, the captain of Team America for multiple years. Very, very good player. And so I was excited to finally play him. I've never played him before. He was playing 3 Auric Rune Suns with Magma Dross. One was very tanky with a 3-up ward with the Master Rune of Resolve. One was very, very fighty with the Ancestral War Axe, or the Axe of Grimnir. And then one was very shooty with the Lava Tongue Adult. So each of them did something different.
I think there's a typo. We have 2 Lava Tongue Adults. One, I think the tanky one is probably the Coldheart Ancient, which reduces 1 damage.
Yeah,
possibly.
So and then he had 15 Hearthguard Berserkers, of course, which are very, very tanky. And his grand strategy was so easy: roll a 2.
Yep. If you don't have a priest, this is an auto.
Yeah, which I didn't.
Although he chose the Flame Spitter, interestingly, because the Flame Spitter can disappear on itself if you roll, I don't know what, enough 4+ on his 12 dice, then it goes away. If you use the wall, you can just not use the ability and it just stays there.
Yeah. He did have a Rune Lord as an ally, and I asked Bill about it. It is to unbind people potentially casting Purple Sun, and then dispel it.
+2. So
+2, and with heroic willpower, you can unbind twice with +2.
He's now a wizard.
Which is great for 90 points, I think he's now.
Yeah, very, very cheap. So he had a list perfectly equipped to deal with kind of the magic heaviness that's happening. And the Flame Spitter, he would just cast it and he never used it. He would just leave it in the corner.
Okay.
I think it might be the cheapest of the invocations, which is why.
No, I think
the
Flame Spitter and the Wall are both 40 points, and the Inferno is 50 or something. They're all cheap.
He might just be using it. Maybe he uses it once, kind of thing. But he wanted to ensure his grand strategy, and with grand strategy being the first type,
it's the easiest to hide, because to banish it with a priest, you need line of sight.
Yeah. And it's,
so this thing you can hide behind your open.
Yeah. Lofnir meant that his magma drops were 18 wounds. I wasn't.
Yep.
I wasn't quite sure how KO was going to deal with that kind of tankiness. The 18 wounds on a 3-up if he finest hour, 2-up if he all-out defense. But because of our mobility, whichever one he finest hour, of course, you would just target the other one. But could hide it, quote unquote, hide a magma droth that he thought was going to impact on his turn more. So
this list is also pretty strong against incarnates because he can charge an incarnate with the Rune Sun, who has the rune of unbreakable resolve, pops that, start the phase. So the what comes back is not relevant.
Yep.
And next turn he does finest hour, and he's sitting on a 3-up, possibly 2-up save, and reducing the damage, incoming damage by 1. So he can survive that turn as well. And every time he takes damage on the 4+, he bleeds mortal
bleeds back, yeah.
And
so
he 18, that's 9 mortal wounds already per magma drop that year.
Yeah, he could potentially also take the rune that 6-up ward on that turn that he's finest hour and doesn't have
use the heroic action to get it on the 5 on the empowered one. Although he has the Spirit of Grimnir command trait, which I believe is the best, so he gets the enhanced effect on a 5+.
On 5 for
which is pretty strong. It's an interesting list. What you usually would expect to see here is a Battlesmith for the 4+. Or of Spell Ignore in the first round, and also to pop his 5+ ward aura in the first turn. So you have 2 turns of ward saves, possibly on a 5-up, and then with the Unbreakable Resolve, 1 phase you get a 3-up, and so on and so forth.
Spell Ignore in the current meta is also pretty good. Because
someone rolls
and it's
on
a 4-up, it doesn't matter.
A 4-up, you can spike without 4-up, nothing happens. Yeah, interesting.
So again, with him being 8 drops and him being a very practiced player, I knew he was going to give me first. And when I had designed the list initially, I basically practiced or ran scenarios in my head of what I would do if I was getting first against various lists. So formatting error. We did play close to the chest, which I think was to my favor because it was 6 objectives. He has the 3 magma drops, and then the Hearthguard are relatively slow. At that point, I called out the no ward munition. And like we said before, that would just melt the Hearthguard. And so I knew Bill was going to be very static with them. Basically, where the Admiral was he wouldn't enter that zone because those things would melt, and he would use the 3 magma drops as his hammers to try to take objectives off me. Like I mentioned at the top, because Bill was aware of, he had heard what my Purple Sun had done the previous game. He put all 3 magma drops far from each other, so they're the Unbreakable Resolve rune was on as far right as possible. The fighty one was sort of kind of in the middle, and then the shooting one was on the left. And then he had finest hour, the shooting one, and then gave me first turn. I had thrown my incarnate sort of kind of in the middle, trying to avoid the tanky one, just because, like you said, Max, even on a double turn, I don't think I could take that guy down with an incarnate, and so I tried to avoid it. So
not with the incarnate, no. Shooting, maybe, because the reduced damage by 1 is only melee, I believe.
Yeah, so I kind of tried to avoid that guy, which meant that I opened up the full spectrum of the right hand side of the board for him to come around and try to take my bottom right objective. My Arcanauts were on all 3 bottom objectives basically by the end of my first turn. And because it was so juicy, and because there was a bet going on the side, which kind of influenced my play, of how many magma drops Bill would lose to a Purple Sun during the course of the tournament, the line was set at 0.5. So if he lost one, I had a friend who would have won some money. And so I tried it and launched a Purple Sun into the fighty Magma. Didn't roll a 1, but because of the -1 save, I just basically outputted at 18 inches, with the Thunderers, and the 24 inches from the Ironclad, and left it on 1 wound with a -2 save. Which wasn't great, but that meant that it was not as fighty as it was, and it's going to take a few turns for it to recover back to a healthy profile. And if he comes into me, I can just unleash hell and take it off anyways. Or I could.
There's a trick that he can do to make it top bracket, because they have a prayer that does that.
I also had the Incarnate like 10 inches away from it, so if he comes towards me with that Magmadroth, I can potentially eat it and level up my Incarnate. So I wasn't too bothered with it being at 1 wound. Screened my Ironclad with the 10 Thunderers and a Navigator off to the side, so that there wasn't any space for. I wasn't quite happy with how wide the Thunderers were in front of my Ironclad, so I just put a Navigator off to the side without enough space for the Magmadroth to enter in between the 2 units, just to cover a wider range. And basically passed turn to Bill. And Bill did exactly what I thought he would do. Very aggressive with the defensive Magmadroth, shooting right into my bottom right, trying to shoot into my bottom right objective. And then both Magmadroths just went into the castle that I had built on the bottom left objective. Taking all the Thunders out, but wasn't able to touch the Ironclad. And wasn't feeling all that great if he doubled me. I think 1 Thunder had survived, so 1 Magmadroth would have to go into it, and then the other Magmadroth would go into the Ironclad. He had 1 to double. Basically took my bottom right objective from me, threatening with that Magmadroth, and then both those Magmadroths finished off the Thunderers, and then I believe started getting into the Arcanauts that were expert conquerors, and starting to whittle them down. On my turn, this game was filmed, so you can go ahead and watch it on the T Sports Network. There was a lot of questions I had as to why I didn't leave the 1 wound Magmadroth to be eaten by an Incarnate. Instead, I had shot it off. Because of how the game was going and how threatened I felt, I wanted to kill that guy and then put a significant amount of damage onto the other Magmadroth threatening me with the Incarnate, because I knew the Incarnate was going to get into it and level up later on as opposed to earlier, but wasting some damage. And so that's what I ended up doing. And game was very, very back and forth. Basically, it became a toilet where I was going up and right, and Bill was going down and left. So we were playing this toilet game. I knew I couldn't deal. There was another moment where the Magmadroth was very, very close to me after he was doubled. He was kind of close to the Ironclad, but I had set up the Gun Hauler to threaten his castle. So he had to think about going into the Ironclad or going into the Gun Hauler and protecting his castle on turn. And because of how conservative Bill is as a player, he went for protecting his own castle instead of going for the gamble and trying to take the Ironclad. I don't think a Magmadroth takes down an Ironclad in a turn anyways. Would miss.
Well, the fighty one maybe.
Yeah, the fighty one was dead at this point, so it was just the very, very defensive one.
If he shoots before he has Ren 2 shooting, or Ren 3 even, I think, if he doesn't use it in the turn before. And with the fighty one, he can get to Ren 3 on that one.
Yeah, so
on his axe. So
he was gone at that point, so it was only the defensive one, so he had to think about either continuing his trajectory, going all the way left to that bottom left objective, or swinging backwards and going into the middle where my Gun Hauler was. He ended up swinging backwards and taking the Gun Hauler, so I only had 1 threat to circle him with, and he had 1 threat to circle. So it's a very, very calculated move, and because I had chosen alpha objective, and I had to choose one that he could capture on a previous turn, he was up by 1 point. And so he just went for a more conservative play and tried to outscore me with that 1 point that he had gotten with the alpha objective, because we were just basically going 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and he had taken 6 on one of the turns.
Yeah.
And then he tried to hold off me scoring more and taking the alpha objectives by throwing his Hearthguard into my bottom left castle. And Max, like you were saying, when they don't have that ward save, it just melts. So I melted the Hearthguard in one turn, and so turn 4 and turn 5, he had a Magmadroth and his Rune Lord and Rune Master, and I had the Ironclad and the Arc Incarnate, but down 1 point. So looking at the board state, turn 5, Bill and I basically said if I had one to turn 5 priority, I can mop up those 2 heroes and score. If he had 1 priority, he would have another turn of scoring, and because of that alpha objective, he would win the game by 1 point. Because I could only tie him. There was no other. I didn't have enough GV to get an additional 1 point from the barged line, that sort of thing. So we rolled turn 5 priority, and luckily enough, I had won it. And so I ended up beating Bill by 2 points. But it was that razor edge priority roll. If he had won it because of that alpha objective early on, he would have beaten me by 1. So there it is. Magmadroths are good. I was very, very surprised by how tanky they were. I thought in my head, 4-up save, 18 wounds doesn't really matter all too much. But with the ward saves that they had stacked on top, he had gotten the enhanced rune as well for 5-up ward, and because I doubled him, he had it for 2 turns.
Yeah.
And an interesting interaction we had there was the Admiral says no ward roll. So if a unit had a ward roll and then another ward roll, it removes everything. It doesn't just cancel one or the other. He had asked me how that interaction went, and we kind of worked our way through it. But because you apply your no ward at the last, I think, that means they don't have a ward.
The most recent one,
the most recent.
Like no ward means no ward. A wound cannot be warded. No, it doesn't matter how many you have.
Like the interesting thing was if he had gotten a ward after I said no ward, does he get a ward, or does he just say no ward, right? Because it's contradicting effects.
It's no wards. It's the same with Nighthaunt, because they can put their 6-up ward to a 5-up when you actually shoot them after you declare the weapon, but it's still it says the wound cannot be warded. It cannot be warded.
Again, I had an interesting decision because I could have potentially put the no ward on the defensive Magmadroth and killed that instead of the Hearthguard, but that thing is only worth 5 models as to 15 Hearthguard worth 15, obviously.
And 15 Hearthguard, if they get somewhere, they do much more damage, obviously.
But
they're slow.
So very.
Although they're not that slow, you can make them run and charge and extra move, and they can go. They can go places.
So I was confident going into the match, thinking that I had the matchup advantage, especially with the Admiral. But Bill played it extremely well, and saw what threats I had and mitigated them quite well. And my son was in the corner, so I kept trying to move it outside of the board so I can recast it with my Admiral, but he kept moving it closer in, not affecting. So we just kept going back and forth in the corner with the sun, so it never really did anything. And I tried to dispel it, but it's very difficult to dispel. So I just had that one turn where I was able to roll 1 die for that Magmadroth and 1 turn of shooting. And so with players who are aware of what it does and mitigates it, you could potentially just not use it, which is what exactly occurred here. But with the Magmadroth being so far, I think that was the effect that it had in this game as opposed to the actual on-table effect. The threat of it kind of made it so Bill had to play a little bit more cagey. If all 3 Magmadroths were very, very close together and just launched right where I was in the bottom left, I think he would have been able to just remove everything plus the Ironclad, and the Incarnate would have to deal with the tanky one. Instead, we had to play this very clockwise game, and because of Fly High, I played that a little bit better.
Yeah, the effect of the Purple Sun there to make him spread out the Magnum drops can be really just quite.
Yeah, if they're all in one place, they play like giants, like 3 together in a. You take out one, and then 2 come for you.
Yeah. So I'd watched his previous games, and I knew that he wanted to triangle them, but because of Purple Sun, he wasn't able to do that. So I already took him out of his comfort zone just by having it in my list.
So, but it sounds like he was essentially in the lead purely because of the way the scoring works on this battle plan.
Yeah. So
do you think if it had been a different battle, well, I mean, it depends on the number of objectives as well, but how do you think it would have gone on some different battle plans?
If he was, I did have some thoughts on it. If it was 3 objectives, I think he couldn't avoid me, but vice versa, I couldn't avoid him. But I think I have a little bit more pushing potential because of the Incarnate. He doesn't want the Magma Dross to deal with Incarnate. Well, he wants that one specific Magma Dross to deal with that Incarnate. But if it was much closer, then he would have to play KG, and I could potentially just tie the game enough where it gets to a certain point where the Magma Dross are gone, and then win in that state. So it's strange because any other player, I think I have a very good matchup with, but because it's Bill and how much he understands the game and where his win path lies, I have to be careful with how I place certain things, and I can't be as aggressive because he'll punish mistakes. So it made me play cagier than I usually play. So not quite sure. I think with someone like him, it's just dice dependent, that sort of thing.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, roll off dependent on that.
Roll off
round,
correct? Yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool. But you got the win and sealed 5-0.
Yeah.
What was it that stopped you winning the tournament then? Because obviously there was you went 5-0. I'm guessing whoever won went 5-0.
Yeah, there was 3 of us in 5-0. So the first tiebreaker was the grand strategy, and as you recall, in game 4, round 1, I spent that CP instead of the gold to reroll my charge.
Yeah.
So that's it. I would have won the tournament because it was grand strat, then battle tactic, then battle points. And at the very end of the tournament, I was behind Anthony Trentinelli by 2 points in battle score. So if I had gotten my grand strategy against Joe, putting me up 3 would mean I would be ahead of Anthony by 1.
Okay.
It would also mean I would have played Anthony going into round 5 with his Slanesh, which I think is a okay matchup. Like with 50 Bliss Barb Archers, like I'm not quite sure how that game goes as well. So
yeah, it's a lot of shots.
But a lot of 5-up and 6-up save models as well. So you could potentially chew through those shots quite quickly. And I don't know if he doesn't really have very much mortal wound output as well.
You outrange him.
Yeah, that as well. So he only has Zigvald as his piece that kind of is a hammer piece.
Yeah,
he has an Incarnate,
but
he has an Incarnate as well.
He has a ward.
Yeah,
he has a ward, so he doesn't have a ward, and then he
correct.
Just dies.
So I think I have a good matchup against that certain list as well. But I ended up playing Bill and had a blinder of a game, probably one of the tightest games of Warhammer I've played. I don't think I made any mistakes that even after watching it back, I don't think I made any like glaring errors. I played as tight as to the best of my ability, and it still came down to that turn 5 priority.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, I mean that's all the games covered then, I guess. We mentioned some things earlier about like the fact that you would take last word. I mean, is there anything else, sort of like anything you say you'd learned from the tournament about KO or your lists that you'd sort of think about for the future?
Yeah, we kind of briefly talked about it. The grand strategy, I'm not completely sure about. Even now, where I've played a few more games, I yesterday I had played in a small 1-day tournament, 3 games, played KO. I failed my grand strategy again, so that's not great. In 8 games, failing it twice is not a great outcome. So I'm not quite sure what it is. Max and I were kind of discussing would take what's theirs, but I don't have a lot of boats to complete that. So I'm not quite sure if I go that way or I go kill battle line. But for example, if I'd play Nick Grimnir again, 9 Kurnock Hunters were part of his battle line. I don't.
That's the thing. Killing battle line can be very hard.
Yeah, it's very matchup dependent.
Like 10 Blight Kings or stuff like that.
So I'm not quite sure where I lean on that grand strat spectrum.
The one where you capture terrain doesn't exist anymore unless it's cities. Because that's a nice one with KO.
I didn't use the battle ram at any point in the whole tournament. So I would basically switch it to last word. I had played some test games with the buoyancy aid to fare around 20 models, just so that you can double screen the ironclad with the Zilfin move. So, but the last word is so good. Just the threat of them coming in and you killing them means that they don't go into you, as opposed to you playing a defensive game. You play an offensive defensive game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, maybe even what I've been considering lately is to have the extra 2 wounds.
Yep.
Because yes, you have the gun holder for the ward save, but you have no healing unless it's innate. +1.
You know, that's the shame about that is it doesn't affect whether you can fly high because it's wounds taken. Which is a shame, because if it did, then it'd be like that'd be really good.
I would take it,
but still, I mean, if you tell someone, this ship has 20 wounds on a 2+ save.
The other thing is Expert Conquerors. It saved my butt so many times. I would just basically plant 2 Arcanauts in the corner of an objective and then string them out very, very far, so that they had 8 ablative wounds but still count as 6 models, instead of having to commit 6 or 7 and make my enemy's charges quite close. With Bill here, I put 2 Arcanauts basically at the very, very corner, and it meant that he had 11-inch charges to get into those Arcanauts, as opposed to much less if I had to ring 6 on objectives. And with the Zilfin, auto run 6 means that you can just if you tow 1 guy or 2 guys in, you can basically take objectives off of your opponent. And KO has that notorious problem with objective capture and objective control. And with gold means you can just auto pass battle shock, and it's very annoying for your opponent. You have to dedicate.
You can roll, then you can re-roll if you're within 9, and then you can use a gold.
And with people taking stuff like Horrorghast as well, the Horrorghast doesn't block that.
Or you can use a command point on one end and use the gold on the other. You can save 2 units.
So it does mean that you have to be high drop, but kind of like I said at the very top of the show, I've practiced quite a bit what my game plan is in various scenarios, because I know people are going to give me first. I know I can close out games on a double, like that's KO strength, but that's relying on a die roll, and I don't necessarily like that. But consequently, they could double turn you, right? So that's the big negative of the list, is giving your opponent a double, not being able to take it yourself. But it does mean most people will give you first, and a lot of people, because of the threat of the Zilfin move, deploy suboptimally to try to mitigate your damage. Everybody thinks you're going to go within 12 and shoot 14 times up 2 damage, but usually I just fade backwards and shoot the 24 and blink the screens, and then the following turn I'll fly high when they don't have screens and drop the purple sun right into their lines, and then that's when I'll jump in. when their screens are gone.
Yeah.
But everybody thinks you're just going to alpha them. Everybody hears about the
Yeah, everyone expects that.
Yeah.
but you can do it.
You
If-
can, but mostly you're only in range of screens. So
Yeah.
why would I?
If you save it to turn 2 as well, it could be potentially after they've doubled you as well.
Correct.
Which
And you
means
can
then
double
it's
that.
potentially you've got a chance to double them back on the when you actually do go in.
Right.
One other question I had was the Spar torpedo, because we didn't mention it at all. I don't know if you actually used it or
I don't think I did.
no.
I think the threat of it is what's great. I think I might have killed a hero with it at one point or the other. With the game here in Game 5, it would have potentially been quite crucial if Bill hadn't set his Magma Droth on the path of the path to kill the gun hauler, because I had set it up so that I had with an 18-inch move with a once per game, I had a 3-inch charge into his Rune Lord that was the only thing holding his middle objective, and I could put the shots elsewhere. Spark torpedo the Rune Lord, then drop a bomb on him and take the objective that way, while saving my shots for something else off to the side. So it could have potentially been impactful in this game, in the last game, but I don't think I used it. Yeah, so here's me not using the battle ram or the spark torpedo in any of my games, but just like having the option there.
Yeah.
Would I take the ability to have 5 models in? Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was one
of in there. 5 models, basically heroes.
It's heroes, isn't it? But it could maybe then come into play with grand strategy choice if you can then use the gun hauler to move units around.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Would take what's theirs. You could fit. You can ferry heroes over late game and still have the ironclad to contest objectives, because that's kind of what I'm most afraid of. Would take what's theirs. My ironclad being out of position on that last turn to complete my grand strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's something you need to, I don't know, test it out, and I don't know, try it out. And we've had a comment in the chat ages ago that you need to have some more KO on Season of War. So maybe that's the place to test it.
KO is interesting in kind of from a streaming perspective, because they're so polarized in what they do. Like games end early, or for your end or for your opponent's end, it's more uncommon for games to last all 5 battle rounds where there wasn't a decided winner, like here in Game 5 with Bill. So trying to make entertaining battle reports, that's not the most engaging. And the other thing that we found the problem with, which we use a fisheye lens to film. And so when you put your ironclad in the corner, it looks very, very funky in the camera setting. And yeah, so it's difficult to film and difficult to film entertaining battle reports, but I think I'll be taking them, especially with this result. Trying to educate people with how it is.
Yeah, it's also not very appealing to watch. You move a model and then the other guy just takes off models.
Yeah, it's not like you're doing many charges, and
there's no piling charges. And so on.
You don't get to go, here's what happened after combat.
Yeah.
And then
here's my turn. Yeah. It was 15 minutes long. All right, your turn. All right, I'll watch you cast magic and pile in and move and stuff. But it's very, very engaging from a place perspective, because it's kind of a knife edge of when you commit. And if you commit wrongly, you're done. And if you commit rightly, you feel like a genius. So that's kind of exactly the type of play style I like. So
yeah, it can be a bit of a knife edge at times, but I don't know, it's cool. We were chatting before the show. Did you say you have a tournament next week?
Yeah, I have a Season of War GT. Just plugging it in. It's. I think we have spots for 90 people, and we have about 80 something ish people already already signed up. I know it's like the week before the tournament, and I'm still calling for people to sign up. But we had expanded it from 64, and there was 20 people on the wait list, so we got all those people in. So it's 80 something people now. So there's still time to get a ticket if you'd like. Here in Toronto, Canada, right by the airport. So that'll be. I hadn't had any chance to play any more games since Summer Slaughter, so I'm taking the exact same list.
Yeah.
Okay.
But after our discussion, I'm like, some of those were mistakes.
Yeah.
With the last word and the grand strategy, I would have liked a little bit more lead time to draw those out and get more information as to what I like as a play style.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck in that tournament then, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll have you back if you go 5-0.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
And then we'll just play a clip of when we talked about the list. And then,
yeah. We can say, just go watch this video.
Yeah. What would you do
Link
in
here.
future with the list? I'll take last word.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think we covered everything. So, thank you very much for coming on, Carl.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. It was long overdue, as
Yep.
we mentioned earlier, but good to have you on eventually. Finally, cool to have you on again in the future at some point as well. Thanks to everyone that watched. Thanks to you, Max, as well. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh yeah, hit like and subscribe and that sort of
All
thing.
that YouTube stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, do the
Do it.
like key action.
It does help a
things.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So support your favorite content creators.
Yeah. And go check out Seasons of War as well.
Yep. Do that.
But yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone. Goodbye. My hand's not visible. But there we go.